Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, disturbing books and 1.5 DNFs. It's my weekly wrap-up. So a few books to talk to you about today in this wrap-up, including 1.5 books that I didn't finish, and I'll explain why it's only 1.5 and not 2 when I get to the books. But yeah, I'm not someone who's very good at DNFing. I talk quite a lot on the channel about the importance of DNFing, how it's a really important skill for us readers to have. But it's something I find myself struggling to do often. I tend to just plough through books, just carry on with them, even when I'm becoming increasingly disengaged from them, and that was the case with both of the things I DNF'd this week. So I think it was definitely the right decision to do, the right thing to do, and it's something I'm conscious I need to get better at. I need to get better at practicing what I preach. So anyway, as usual in this video, I'll talk about what I've read this week, what I am reading at the moment, what I'm going to be reading next, and we'll also talk about what's been on the channel and what's coming up on the channel. So first thing to note is I haven't read any westerns this week, which I feel quite bad about because it's June on the Range. I had a very western heavy start to June on the Range, so that first week of June on the Range I read a ton of westerns. I haven't read any this week. I have at least one actually a couple that I think I'll get to next week. So yeah, I need to get back into reading some westerns for June on the Range. So what have I finished this week then? So the first thing was a book I talked about last week that I was currently reading then. That is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which is a very disturbing book about the abusive relationship between an older guy who's a teacher and one of his pupils. I thought this was a really good book. I thought it was really well written, but I didn't absolutely love it. There was something about it that stopped me fully connecting with the story. And I'm not entirely sure what that was. It did skip around a lot time-wise, and I think that was part of the reason. I was reading what was an advanced copy. Obviously, the book's actually been out for a while, but I had an advanced copy that I'd got from NetGalley that I hadn't got around to reading. So I was reading that, and the formatting wasn't perfect in it. So I do wonder in the finished version if those jumps between different time frames were clearer, and that might have helped with my appreciation of the book. But it's definitely really well written, and the central character, the thing that's interesting about it as a book is it's written from the perspective of the female character who was abused as a teenager and is now grown up, but has maintained her contact with her abuser. So it's a really interesting concept and an important thing to talk about, an important topic to tackle. And the perspective was definitely interesting, and you see her kind of self-delusion, I suppose, in terms of her, not really thinking that what happened to her was abuse, although it clearly was. So a really interesting book, but I didn't love it. I thought it was really good, but I didn't, as I say, there was something about it that stopped me kind of fully connecting with it. So that was the first thing I finished this week. The second thing then was People Who Knock on the Door by Patricia Highsmith, part of my ongoing read-through of all of Patricia Highsmith's books. This was an interesting one. So this is a much later Highsmith book. We're near the end of that kind of journey that Anne Novella and I have been going on in terms of reading all of her books. So this is one of her final books. I think there's only 2 more novels to go after this, maybe 3. And it's about religious fundamentalism in the States. So about a family where the father becomes a born-again Christian and is becomes completely immersed in the kind of teachings of the fundamentalist church he goes to. He has 2 teenage sons, and it's mainly focuses on the elder of those 2 sons, and his relationship with his dad, and the fact that his dad becomes increasingly disapproving of his relationship with a girl, his girlfriend, and things like that. So it was a really good book. As is often the case with Patricia Highsmith, I found that I liked it more at the end than I was when I was reading it. There's something she has the habit or the skill of doing in terms of the way she wraps books up that makes everything come together at the end in a really, really satisfying way, and that was definitely the case with this one. So yeah, another really solid book from Patricia Highsmith. Some really interesting characters in it, and whilst it wasn't as as typically thriller-ish as a lot of her earlier books. It was still, still had some tense moments and was really, really good. After that, a book that my dad gave me. This is Waldo and Magic Incorporated by Robert A. Heinlein. So this is the book that I half DNF'd. So as you can probably guess from the title, this is 2 novellas. The first one of which is Waldo. The second one is Magic Incorporated. My dad is a huge fan of Magic Incorporated, but didn't like Waldo as much, and I agree with that assessment. I didn't like Waldo as much either. So Waldo, I ended up DNFing. I just couldn't get into it at all. I just couldn't connect with the writing, and I couldn't even really figure out what it was supposed to be about. Magic Incorporated, I connected with a lot more. I didn't love it, I think, as much as my dad does, but I did think it was an interesting story, and particularly interesting in that it was written in, I think, about 1940. So it's a story about a world, like a kind of modern America, where magic is real. So something that is nowadays quite familiar to us from series like the Dresden Files series, use a similar concept, but I suspect in 1940 was a bit more surprising for readers. And it's about this guy who's a magician who has a business, and there's a like this company, Magic Incorporated, this kind of aggressive group of people who are kind of muscling in on his business and trying to basically extort him. So it was a fun story. The central character was interesting. It moves at quite a decent pace. Good concepts in the background, as I said, and it was tense and enjoyable. So yeah, I had fun with that. After that, then I finished Hawke Mountain by Conor Habib, which I think I mentioned last week as well. So I've been listening to the audiobook of that. I actually finished it off. I read the last 25% or so digitally. And I was a bit disappointed by this. So this is a book that I've seen lots of people rave about. Lots of people really, really like it. And I was really enjoying it as well for the first kind of third or so. It's a book very much split into 3 acts. And I can't tell you what those 3 acts are because it would spoil the book for you. But the first act is about a guy. So there's this guy, the central character, the narrator, and his son who are at the beach for the day. And this guy from the narrator's past comes back into his life. So a guy that he knew in high school, who bullied him in high school, reappears in his life and kind of injects himself into their life, ends up staying with them in a like one of those kind of almost like a comedy of manners where it just becomes awkward to kick him out of the house basically, and the story kind of progresses from there. So I thought that setup was really, really interesting, and actually something a lot like a book I can imagine Patricia Highsmith writing. So Patricia Highsmith specialised in that kind of book where you don't know what's going to happen and it's slightly uneasy, and that definitely is true for the first kind of 25-30% of Hawke Mountain. After that, there's a big thing that happens. There's a big twist, and I started liking the book a lot less after that. There's a kind of subtlety to that first section, which I really, really enjoyed, in that you just don't know what's going to happen. But after that, it just became the book adopts a different tone, shall we say, and I enjoyed it less and less the more of it I read. So I will do a review of it. I think I've definitely got some things to say about it. So look out for a review video in the next couple of weeks on the channel. After that then, I finished Saga Volume 4 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, so the 4th in this comic book series. Still really, really enjoying it. So as I've said when I've talked about previous episodes, previous volumes of the series, it's about a relationship between two people on the opposite sides of a war. They have a child through their relationship, so it's about kind of their family dynamic and things like that. But there's just loads of interesting, fun stuff going on in this book. Some really interesting kind of sci-fi concepts, and it's got something to say as well about war and romance and family life, like loads of different things. Just a really fun, interesting series, and really well illustrated as well. I really like the illustrations. And then my other DNF of the week then, and I should say as well, I've just started Saga Volume 5, so that is what I'm currently reading. In terms of the other DNF then, so the other DNF was a hard case crime book, Forever and a Death by Donald E. Wesrlake. And this is the second Donald E. Wesrlake book I've tried recently, and he's an author I genuinely can't remember if I've read anything by him in the past. I think I have, like ages ago, but hadn't read anything recently. And he's an author, a lot of people who like crime fiction really, really rate. So I'd read previously another hard case crime book by him, The Cutie, and then picked up this one, and I just didn't get on with this one at all. So the background to this book is interesting. So in the kind of doldrum years, I guess, of the Bond franchise, so before GoldenEye came out with Pierce Brosnan and kind of reinvigorated the Bond movies, the producers of the Bond films went out to a bunch of different writers and got them to write kind of concepts for a new Bond film. And Donald E. Wesrlake was one of those writers and came up with this concept for Forever and a Death. Clearly they didn't progress with that as a film, so he then turned it into a novel, which has now been published by Hard Case Crime. And you can kind of see how it could be a Bond film in that it's got this kind of like supervillain type character who's like an industrialist, and pitted against him are a group of environmentalists. And the book starts with him, the industrialist, testing this thing which kind of causes almost like tidal waves. And this woman who's one of the environmentalists apparently drowns as part of that. So it was kind of an interesting concept at the start, but I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't connect with it. And I just decided I've had enough of this. I'm going to put it down and read something else. So yeah, that one was the other DNF. That was like the full DNF rather than the half DNF this week. So in terms of what I'm going to be reading next, as I said, I need to get back to Western. So I think I'm going to read this Edge book, which is book 22, Slaughter Road by George G. Gilman. I'm also probably going to try and read this week The Chisholms by Evan Hunter, his kind of novel of frontier life. So yeah, looking forward to giving that a try as well. And I may also try, I'm going to try and read one of the Hornblower books this month as a kind of British alternative to Westerns. So yeah, I may pick that up this week as well. In terms of what's been on the channel then, so you had my unboxing and first impressions video for this, the new Books Co Gullah 7, which is a one of these kind of Android e-readers. So an e-ink device that runs Android, so you can install any apps you want on it. I'm really enjoying it so far. This is what I read the final bit of Hawke Mountain on, and it's great for reading on. You've also had a couple of videos for me about long books. I'm going to do a short series of videos about long books. So you had the first two of those. The first one was just some thoughts on long books and the pleasures and perils of long books. And then the second one was the 10 longest books I've read. And I also did another video talking about my attempts to give up using the Kindle ecosystem and some challenges I've had in that recently. In the week ahead then, I'm going to do another long books video, so the 10 long books that I think are worth your time. I'm going to do a review of Deliver Me by El Nash. I've got a video for Father's Day about what books aimed at men are really about. And I'm probably going to do a video on disturbing books. I've kind of finished I've finished reading all of the books I intended to read pretty much for my disturbing books project. So I might do a quick wrap up video for that ahead of, at some point when I can find the time, doing a like tier ranking video of all the disturbing books I've read. So yeah, that's what you can see on the channel in the week ahead. Anyway, I will leave it there and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.